Hello and welcome to From the BO, the Burnley podcast. I'm Andrew Greaves. No Simon Evans this week. He's on his hollybobs in America. Last I saw he was in Arizona, climbing up big rocks and enjoying the local hospitality to its fullest. I am joined, however, as usual, by Justin Connolly, Paul Woodhouse and Chris Borden. The international break's over, which means we're back to Premier League football at the weekend with an away trip to Brentford. Games coming thick and fast now over the next few weeks, and we are in that kind of period which we have termed better, I think is the most diplomatic way of saying it, in terms of the run of games. Before we get on to Brentford, though, we're going to discuss something that I think most Burnley fans will be discussing amongst themselves on the WhatsApp groups. We've certainly been discussing it, and that's this subject of atmosphere at Turf Moor, and the club this week advertising on LinkedIn of all places. I'm not sure if that's where all the drummers hang out, but LinkedIn for an optimistic drummer to help with the atmosphere. Not only that, just as we're starting to record, so we record last night, if you're listening on Friday, Thursday night, an email dropped in to the inboxes of all season ticket holders, basically saying, how do we get a better atmosphere? So, Justin Connolly, our resident music man, drummer, he's not having a drummer the problem.
I don't think so. I mean, we're all laughing at it, but it's quite incredible. It's a terrible idea. A drummer in the ground is probably the worst idea I've ever heard, not just in relation to football, but in relation to anything on the planet. I'm astounded that anybody in the football club has even thought that this has got past the sort of suggestion stage, never mind the actual job advert. It's just ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, I think there's been a little bit of a kickback about it, hasn't there? A little bit of, and the email from the club has probably been prompted by that. So whether it'll actually happen or not, I don't know. If it does happen, I just hope that they place this drummer as far away from me in the ground as possible. Otherwise, I'm just never going to have a good time at Turf Moor again. I just can't imagine anything worse than having some person smacking a drum all the time, trying to G the crowd up when we're losing 4-0 again.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. I mean, I love the idea now. As soon as you said, I hope it doesn't happen, I love the idea of a load of out-of-work drummers queued up on Harry Potter's way, looking very, very pissed off because they're no longer going to have a drummer. Chris, add a bit of sanity. You're a fan of a drum beat, aren't you?
I'll say, what's an optimistic drummer? I mean, I've heard of like James Brown's funky drummer and things like that, and like I say, Rennie's out of work at the moment, isn't he? And Mike Joyce, I'm sure he could bag a few pots and pans about, but it's just it's tin pot. Let's have it right. You know, for many years we've mocked clubs with drums, clubs with clapper sticks, clubs playing fake crowd noise.
Who's that prick with the bells? Is it Pompey? That knobhead with the sleigh bells. Oh man.
Just
it's tin pot, isn't it?
Yeah, we don't need it to generate atmosphere. You know, it's chicken and egg job, isn't it? Like I say, if you've lost every home game, it ain't going to be party time at Turf Moor, is it? It's pure and simple. You know, and it doesn't. You know, Burnley fans back the club through thick and thin. It's not a case of they're only being fickle because they're not winning games. But I was saying before on the chat, it's that we haven't stayed in the games. the games they've been over and done with, done and dusted with half an hour to go. Well, it's going to be funereal, isn't it? It's just the way it is. If you're still in, even the Man United game, they probably wouldn't have played if they were still, wouldn't have scored if they were still playing. But at least you're still in it with in the dying moments. And you might nick an equaliser, and Burnley fans don't need any encouragement to back their side. It's just it's certainly not a drummer.
No. And Woody, I mean, you mentioned, I know you've watched all the games on TV. The atmosphere has not been that bad. I mean, one of the things that I noticed on the Chelsea game, watching from home as I did, was the atmosphere was coming through on the Chelsea game. And that first half, I think we all agreed, probably the best 45 minutes of football, or amongst the first 45 minutes of football. There's a direct correlation between performance on the pitch and performance in the stands, isn't there?
Well, I mean, it's a bit of a basic, isn't it? It always has been the case. If it's good, you clap. If it's shit, you shut up and you boo, don't you? You don't think, let me twat something randomly on the back of the cricket field stand. Although those heady days of Jimmy Mullins, Claret and Blue Army, and people twatting, stainless steel cladding for half an hour, may suddenly see a reinvigorating moment down the turf. But it's just absurd, isn't it? Can you imagine that board meeting where they sat around going, how are we going to turn this around, lads, in an American accent? We've lost 5 on the bounce. Tell you what, let's get a fucking drummer on link.
It's just absurd.
Do you have to have an interview and all that? I mean, there's no terms and conditions. What's the wage? I'll do it for a certain price. I'm a mercenary. I'll do it for a certain price. Yeah.
It says competitive.
I thought they were a little bit optimistic. If you saw at the bottom of the advert, it said that because they expect to get a lot of applications, only people invited for an interview will get a response.
And it did actually say previous percussion or drumming experience required. Now, as far as I'm aware, you're not doing big solos. You are literally with a big drum.
Just get Bears with maracas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, we don't know what it is. We don't know what we're going to be doing.
Are they providing the drum, and you have to bring your own? What size is it?
Specify that on the advert, did it?
And if we're sold out, where
I think
does the drum stand?
Yeah, because if you paid 500 quid for a season ticket and he's sat next to you, you're not going to be happy about it, are you?
You actually turn up one day. You turn up one match day, it's like one of them one-man band things with a drum on his belly and clackers on his knees. You just sat there and you're going, that's not my seat, is it? Oh, shit, where's Dave gone?
I hope he's got a mouth organ as well.
Full Bob Dylan, that's what you want, isn't it? Yeah. The mouth organ on the little clipper. And...
To be fair, I really think Company had it right in his press conference ahead of the Bournemouth game, the Brentford game. Sorry, he was asked if he thought the club needed a drummer, and he was quite sort of circumspect about it. He sort of said, "Oh well, that's a decision for the custodians of the club to make," But then he went on to say exactly what every football fan who knows anything about the game would say, which is that the fans follow the momentum of the game. When the game's up in your favour or you're up against it but having a go, the crowd will respond, and there's like a reciprocal energy that goes between the players and the crowd, and that's how you generate an atmosphere in the ground. So I think he gets it, and it's astounding to me that the hierarchy in the club, or the fan experience people, whatever they like to call themselves, that they don't get it and follow it up with the email, which is even more ridiculous, if you ask me. I don't know. I've got the email in front of me now. I think it's only been sent out to season ticket holders. Do you think we should sort of read it out, then everybody knows what we're talking about?
It's all over. It's all over social media. It's in the public domain.
So,
give a read of that.
Dear Burnley FC season ticket holder, we are writing to you regarding a recent club job advert that was placed for a drummer. Much speculation has arisen from this advert and feedback on both sides of the coin has been heard. That's a mixed metaphor there, if ever there was one. At the end of last season, Vincent Kompany asked the fans to make Turf Moor a fortress. Despite this, most supporters would agree that the atmosphere at Turf Moor this season has felt flat. Insert sentence here about losing every game. With that, we come to you, the season ticket holder, to hear your suggestions on how we can collectively lift the match day atmosphere. We are open to hearing any and all suggestions as to how to bring back the Turf Moor roar. God, that's really inspirational. We must ensure the squad hears and feels our support throughout the 90 minutes and beyond. We invite you to submit your suggestions as to how we best do this. Let's bring the noise, Burnley Football Club. I mean, that's quite patronising, isn't it? Because that sort of suggests that it's our fault.
Exactly. You know, hard-working Burnley fans paying their, and it's not cheap. Let's have it right. And to have that turned on them when they've lost 5 out of 5 home games, it just feels wrong to me. But I say I've long felt. I mean, we're not in the 70s and 80s anymore. We're not in Victorian stadia. We're in relatively new surroundings now that have been specifically built, and there's so much analysis goes on within the game now. I'm saying that you used to spend half the game staring at opposition fans and like goading them, knowing full well you'd run a mile if you saw them outside. But I think people spend so much time just sat analysing a game now, rather than creating atmosphere, singing songs. Man, I used to love that. Me and my mate Gavin would go and hide from his dad so he could sing the naughty songs, halfway up the long side next to No Man's Land, and it's just not that culture anymore. And you can create a great atmosphere in the modern grounds, but it's difficult, especially when you're losing every week.
I mean, they could push really hard for a standing section. They could go hell for leather just to get people stood up again.
Yeah, I do think that makes a massive difference, Woody. I do think the standing areas, or when you go to an away ground and you stood up, and I know it's different when you're in an away ground, you're that kind of, you're the outsiders, you relish taking the piss out of the home fans for not making a noise. But I do think there's something about standing up at a football match and having a concentrated section of people stood up that then creates that noise. And, the cricket field creates a noise, you know what I mean? And I just think if you just took the shackles off, as you say, Woody, went hell for leather, right, cricket field as of next season or whatever is going to be fully standing. If you don't want to, if you still want to sit down, then you can move your season ticket somewhere else, and we'll open up seats for people to move into the cricket field, because I think this season there were no tickets in the cricket field whatsoever for sale. There's little things you can do, but I just think I agree with what you said, Justin. It's patronising to kind of go, and we'll all admit it's been a little bit flat this season, hasn't it? Nudge, nudge. You've been a little bit shit this year, haven't you? With your old sing song.
Yeah. Even though Vincent said we need to start making this place a fortress. Yeah.
Well, if the fans make it a fortress, then players might turn up and make it a fortress on the pitch. Yeah,
that's it. What happened? You know what I mean? It's kind of, and there were some interesting comments from Vincent in his presser today, and we'll get on to Brentford and the kind of preview stuff. But he did say, I've always said this is about the team. I do think there is a balance between being able to have results now, which I think is this run of games that we're coming into, and also making sure that in the future we're able to get results against the big teams as well, which I think is what we've talked about before, that being that kind of crash course in Premier League experience for some of these younger lads, and not quite writing games off, but almost kind of going, well, if we get out of them, then that'll be a bonus because it's not in my bigger plan of what we do. I do think that genuinely, when we start playing teams where we are still in the game, where we are perhaps putting them to the sword, when we smashed Brentford a couple of years ago, when they came and they run a half-decent run and they came to us and, we took them apart, the atmosphere is obviously going to be better. But I would say as well, last season, when we were winning too much, everything got flat because it was just that tippy tappy, pass it around. It wasn't.
You take it for granted,
like
yeah. But it's like fans aren't daft. They know, when a team needs a lift during a game, and there's, like I say, certain moments. You mentioned before, sort of Michael Duff clattering Angel Di Maria on his debut. I can remember Stevie Jordan smashing Wilshere in the Carling Cup game that against Arsenal. That's set the tone. We're here tonight, and we're gonna knock you over. And
it doesn't have to be an act of violence, though, does it?
No.
It does help,
but
it can be a mazy run down the wing.
Yeah, but it can be an injustice, from the officials, or anything like that. It's no.
Ask Kevin Ball.
Yeah,
he's still down in there on that tackle against bastards. Yeah.
I know.
We've mentioned it a couple of times. We've been quite passive, haven't we? And the performance has been passive, and that, I think, the fans have been passive because of the performance has been passive. We've not laid a glove on a lot of teams. We've got ourselves into positions, score first against Spurs, score first against Chelsea, and then we're then just too passive, and we're not looking for that extra bit. We're not kind of taking games to teams who, we've said, run out of the number of times that we said, United and Chelsea were the worst United and Chelsea teams we've seen at Turf Moor in recent times. You still need to, I think we all admitted against United, we were still in it, but we were in it from 70 yards away from their goal, from Onana's goal. We know he's a dodgy keeper. So actually, how do you raise the atmosphere? Well, you try and win set pieces. You try and get corners. You stick balls over the top of him. You're trying to get something.
Tempo,
I think we had
urgency,
both fullbacks on a booking, I think, that game. Certainly against Chelsea, I think in the end we had both fullbacks on a booking. Let's get at them. We've got all of these exciting players, but whether it's, lack of confidence or whatever it might be, what we've needed is them balls beyond the fullback, getting these quick wingers beyond that fullback. And I've spotted it a few times, going back to the overanalyzation of the game, where Koleosho in the first few games, he's looking for that ball, left wing, beyond the right back. And nobody in the defence, rather than playing that long ball, the defence has kind of gone, well, you have another touch, I'll have another touch. And then all of a sudden, we've retreated back to his own 6-yard line. And then the pass is off then because we just drop it into that 30 yards from goal, give the ball away. So I think performance is a big thing. I can't really expect how the club expects fans to have been any different. But it's also the match, we talk about match day experience and the fan experience. Just get the pie situation sorted, for God's sake. I'm pissed off at pie, so I'm not singing. I'm not singing until I get a pie that's not cremated on top, frozen in the middle, or I can't get a pie, or I've got to go down 10 minutes before half time to try and get in a queue for some kind of pastry product. Yeah. There's all little bits, you know what I mean? Get get everything sorted. Get the music better, get the fan experience better. The minute we're going there, we can't have a pie, the music's shit, the beer's shit, the performances are shit.
Yeah, and we're expected to be singing and dancing up and down the terraces.
Yeah, I'm doing the Macarena in the fucking.
I think. I think the bottom line, the bottom line in this situation is whatever they think, and I don't know who's responsible for this, but whatever they think, it is not possible to generate an artificial atmosphere at a football match. We've seen anybody who went to the Etihad last season for that FA Cup game. They've got singers with guitars on stages dotted around the stadium outside singing Oasis songs and Blue Moon and all that sort of nonsense. Inside the ground, they're piping chants in and they're sort of trying to get people singing songs about players, and the Blue Moon's rising on the big screen and all. And it's just embarrassing because the crowd are just sat there going, this isn't working for me. They might be enjoying the football, but you can't generate the real passion unless you get something from the players on the pitch. It just doesn't happen. And if we're going to go down that road, what else are they going to do? Because a drummer sat alone in the Bob Lord stand or wherever they're going to put him. What impact is that going to have? I'm terrified that the next stage is going to be a trumpet, and then oh God, that band that follows England around.
Oh, they've been playing since England got the nil-apiece draw in Rome in 1997. They've been playing the bloody Great Escape ever since.
Yeah.
For no apparent reason. Since, and it's I don't know what the cricket guys think. Sort of the Barmy Army and all that malarkey. I mean, they seem to not mind that sort of thing. But again, it's a different. There's a different whole tempo to that sport in its entirety. But what would a Burnley drummer play? What songs are he going to play his drum to?
I tell you what he's playing.
Optimistic stuff, obviously.
He's playing and then we all shout Burnley.
You remember the one? You remember the one at Blackburn?
The wrong time.
Yeah. Can you remember the one at Blackburn? He just went do. You're like, oh, it's brilliant, that, isn't it? It's proper inspiring.
Blackburn education, though, that, Chris.
Hey, I went to Blackburn College.
You're one of the lucky ones, mate. You're one of the lucky ones. So it's a big thumbs down to the drummer, I'm guessing, from all of us. We're all unanimous in the fact that we don't want a drummer. Or any mechanism that creates a fake atmosphere. Somebody described it as plastic, and I think Tony Scholes on his Up the Clarets message board said, think of a plastic Premier League club. Who do you think of? Brighton. Who has a drummer? Brighton. Who's a fan of Brighton? Burnley FC's fan experience director, Russell Ball. They always say, don't they, flattery is the best form of flattery, or whatever they say.
Imitation is the best form of flattery. I think it's the.
There we go. I don't know what I said then. What are they?
Flattery is the best form of flattery.
Flattery is the best form of entertainment. We've gone out and gone, oh, that sounds all right on Match at Day.
Yeah.
What they don't realise is that Match of the Day are recording soundscapes to play over some of the footage. That's how TV works. It's what they do when they're not live, when they're highlights packages. That's what they're doing. It's just, I just cannot. I agree that what's he playing? If he's knocking out a kind of John Bonham style solo, then you kind of go, oh, fair enough. Just do that at half time, that'll do. It just won't work.
Just get Animal from the Muppets. He's out of work, isn't he?
Can he play left back though, Chris? Can he play inverted left back? Because if he can,
I'm going to say yes.
I think he can.
Yeah, I think he could.
Anyway,
Brentford will play anyway.
Enough of this drumbeat-driven nonsense. We'll be back after this very short break with a preview of the Brentford game. Right then, so after 2 weeks of international football, of which I have to be honest, the only bright spot for me of international football is getting to watch Jude Bellingham, who I thought was absolutely superb for England against Italy. An absolute best midfielder in the world, bar none. Probably the best footballer at the minute, bar none, on the planet. But that's about as much interest as international football holds to me. So I think most of us are probably happy that we are back in Premier League action this weekend. Some slight injury worries before the trip to London. Vincent Kompany touching on the fact that Jordan Bayer's not going to be back yet. He, of course, missed the Chelsea game. He's doing well in his rehab. They don't like to say too much because of GDPR and things like that. But also, Alder Kiel coming back from international duty pretty much just a couple of days after joining up with the Belgian squad. Better news on that, Kompany says, but a decision to be made ahead of Saturday. Woody, that doesn't sound great, does it? In manager speak, when they talk about there's a decision to be made, it's going to be Dara O'Shea and Delquar into at centre half. You'd expect at the Brentford Community Stadium.
Yes, I think that's probably fair to say. Yeah, and it doesn't invoke that much confidence, does it? Quite away, which means they'll probably have an absolute stormer and a clean sheet, or hopefully. But yeah, I'm slightly worried about that.
I'm just hoping we get that optimistic drummer in ahead of the trip to London, because we're going to need optimistic 10-piece band
to play at centre half. Yeah,
but Justin, I mean, companies talked about this is the reason you build a squad. This is one of those games. We've identified this game, Bournemouth away the week after, then Palace at home as a kind of judge us after we've played these 3 games. We know no game is easy in the Premier League, but this does feel like perhaps more of our kind of playing level, does it not?
Well, you would hope so, wouldn't you? I mean, that's what's been said, through that run of terrible home defeats. It's been, we've had a really tough start, and we've got a little run now where what did Company say? He said these are games that we aren't beaten before we've even kicked a ball, which I suppose is true. But they'll be saying the same thing. They'll be saying, look, we've got Burnley at home this Saturday. They've had a difficult start, haven't they? They've not performed quite as well as they might have hoped. And that last game against United, where they conceded 2 goals in injury time to lose, that's a real blow, isn't it? I mean, they say that when you win games like that, when you come back from being a goal down and you win with a sort of last minute strike, that builds the confidence that even when you're behind in a game, that you've got what it takes to come back. But I suppose also the sort of opposite of that is true, isn't it? If you've been 1-0 up against United and you get to 90 minutes and you end up losing, that's going to knock your confidence massively. So I'm hoping that's going to have an impact in the negative rather than in the positive. But I think they will be looking just like we are at this as being a game that they should be getting 3 points out of. No question.
Yeah, and Chris, still just the 1 win for Brentford, but their kind of saving grace, I guess, is the number of draws that they've got. So 1 win, 4 draws. We talked about this on the podcast. That's the kind of start we'd have probably been looking for, wouldn't it? Kind of that you want an extra draw. You get a draw against United out the blue, you get a draw against Chelsea, and all of a sudden our position, it's only an extra 2 points. But when we talk about momentum and trying to build that run of games, if we'd have got the draw against Forest, draw against United, beat Luton, draw against Chelsea, that would have felt like a bit of a run, wouldn't it? And sometimes those draws are as important as a victory, aren't they? If you're not going to get the win, don't lose. I know that sounds kind of quite basic.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, you've got to find a way to pick up any sort of result in this league. And we're shown away from home against teams we would probably deem outside the. I'm going to go down to a big 8 or 9 at the moment. Anyone outside that, Brentford will feel they can pick up results. They'll be particularly disappointed to lose 3-1 at home to Everton a few weeks ago. Everton were really under the pump. Had Everton lost that, you fear for Sean. Like Justin says, to go for that was written in the stars, wasn't it? At United, Sir Alex's his wife has sadly died, and he just it was just going to happen, wasn't it? Fergie time and this, that, and the other. But I was just looking, if Burnley can pick up a result there this week, and if they, especially beat Brentford are then at Chelsea, again home to West Ham, at Liverpool, at home to Arsenal, and if they've only 1 win going into those 4 games, they're sucked right in, aren't they? Burnley start picking up a few points. They're leapfrogging them in the table. And like I said, they've got Tony to come back. lost Raya to Arsenal, etc. I mean, you take Eriksen out of the equation from a couple of seasons ago, and they're a different side altogether. But I believe from sort of reading reports on them, they've an exceptionally high XG. People can mock XG and this. They're creating a lot of chances. Without Tony, they're not taking them. So they're in line for difference. They're does Wissa and Buemo get enough goals? Probably not, but that's your hope. They're a fast side, they're a direct side, and they'll pose a real threat. Yeah, they do get it forward. The goalkeeper, apparently, like we talk about Muric, as good a goalkeeper in the Premier League in terms of longer range passing and getting Brentford going. Hickey, that they've brought in from Bologna, who's done ever so well. A real outlet for him down the right hand side. And of course, we don't know if Ben Mee will make it or not, but he's had a muscle injury. But Nathan Collins, who is likely to play, I thought was a fabulous player, and I'd really love to have seen Burnley build the team around him. When we go back to last summer, not to be, but he's. I think he's a top player, and we'll have a job on to get past him.
Yeah, and I guess Brentford, a bit like Brighton, are one of those sides who we perhaps looked upon last season as, and maybe even the season before when Brentford had that good start to life in the Premier League, as I don't want to use the word model of success, but one that you can almost hope to emulate in terms of the style of players, in terms of having to think outside the box a little bit. Perhaps with a Ben Mee and a couple of the other players, they've got a little bit of a more balanced blend of youth and experience in there. But as Chris says, it's going to be a tough fixture, isn't it? We're not certainly not going into it expecting 3 points, even if we think it is certainly a game that is winnable.
Exactly. It's a funny one, because we'd have played this, I think, a little bit in the season. We may have thought that there was probably less opportunity than there maybe is now, after they've had this little run of poor form. And they seem to be quite lucky, Brentford, in the way that they kind of came up, and Ivan Toney was that striker. Everybody talks about this striker, don't they, that can get 10 or 15. All of a sudden it gets spoken about with regards to England. Then he's out again, and now they're struggling again. And it will be a very interesting game, because I think they won't be high on confidence. I don't think we will. And it's one of those that's either tailor-made for a 0-0 board draw, or somebody's going to get either spanked and she's going to fly around all over the place. So we'll see.
Justin, we're hoping for the latter, but Woody talked about Ivan Toney, Chris talked about Ivan Toney. Have we got our own kind of Ivan Toney? I don't want to be accused of being kind of, fairy tale stuff, but kind of Lyle Foster's that kind of strong, comes away from the front line, makes things happen, is a presence against defenders. This almost feels like the kind of game for somebody like Foster. He's perhaps a modern, old-fashioned centre forward, doesn't it?
Yeah, and he's having a great season, isn't he? Apart from that, indiscretion that got him sent off and put him off his stride a little bit. But when he came back after that, he looks as good as he did before. I mean, what can we say about him that we haven't said already? He looks to me like the real deal. He looks really strong on the ball. He looks great at holding play up. He doesn't get that many chances, but when he does get a chance, it invariably ends up in the back of the net. So I think if we can, it's a real worry to me that our first choice central defensive pairing is certain not to be playing. Alderkirk, I think, from what company says, has a chance, but I think they say that. And more often than not, he doesn't end up on the team sheet. So we might be looking at Delcroix and Dara O'Shea in the centre of the defence, which to me is not. I remain unconvinced by either of them. Never mind as a pair. So that's not a great foundation to be building on. But like as Woody said earlier on, you never know what's going to happen in these situations. They might rise to the occasion, and if they're not playing sort of in the flat atmosphere of Turf Moor, it might make it a little bit easier for them. I think you're right. I think Foster's the key, isn't he? As Chris said, Brentford have got an excellent what's it called? XG
XG
expected goals. I saw one of these sort of meaningless tables today, which sort of works out what position people would be in if their expected goals was their actual goals. And I think Brentford were up in 8th or something like that after taking that into account, while we were still sort of 3rd from bottom. Mm-hmm. So I'm hopeful that we've got that attacking edge that might put us beyond them. And I think Foster is the real deal. And I think if he can continue to produce the kind of form he's had, and if the wide players that we've got, the exciting attacking wide players we've got, can provide him with the chances, we've got every chance. I still think we've got the talent. It's just getting that little bit of luck, getting that little bit of organisation right, and it could go our way. But I have to say, I think what everybody else has said, it's going to be a hard game, and I would be happy with a point at the end of the day.
And Chris, a point away from home, 3 points from your home games or your winnable home games will be enough, won't it? If we get a point on the road at Brentford, a point on the road at Bournemouth, and a win against Crystal Palace, we won't be that far off a point a game, will we? After that horrific home run that we keep talking about, you've got to be sensible, and you would take a point, wouldn't you? Of course you would.
Oh, certainly Saturday. I'd be looking at. I certainly think they're capable of going to Bournemouth and winning. I'll be looking at a point minimum at Bournemouth. Palace at home's, another of them. The toss of a coin games, aren't they? People you expect you to sort of turn up at home to teams like in inverted commas Crystal Palace, but I'd say they're they don't give much away either. All the sides, people are sort of mocking Burnley, Sheffield and Luton at the moment, but any side that's in the Premier League's a top side. Don't have no bones about it. They're not, they're there on merit, and they're there for a reason. And you've just got to. All those sort of things have got to go in your favour. You've got to take advantage of your home form. Let's say, which Burnley they've had a stinking start in terms of opposition there, if nothing else. But I'd be looking at that's it. Saturday's winnable. They're all winnable, but it's certainly Bournemouth. You look at the cup game last year when Burnley put out what you would consider a weakened side and went there and thoroughly deserved to win there. And they've had a change in manager and so on and so forth. But I'd expect Bournemouth to be down among the dead men as such at the end of the season. You've got to be taking points off your rivals.
Yeah, it does feel like Bournemouth are like we were perhaps not last season, the season before, coming to the end of a kind of this year's the year for them to kind of drop out again. But Woody, if you're Vincent Kompany, are you making changes? We obviously don't know what he's been up to on the training ground. He's lost perhaps the likes of, your internationals who've gone away. So he's perhaps not been able to work on as much with as many players. But are you making any changes to that lineup given the games we've had and the games we've got coming up?
I think what we do, what Vincent winds up doing, are two completely different things, as we've found so far. We know perfectly damn well what changes are going to be made, and then there'll be two out of left field where we've gone, why the fuck has he just done that? It doesn't work for him. So let's anticipate that again. So,
Justin, would you? Well, yeah, quite.
Well, he's had 2 weeks to think about it, hasn't he? So the performance against Chelsea was certainly in that second half was subpar. I think this is one of the problems we've got in sort of predicting what's going to happen. We have got no idea what the team's going to be. You know, last season it was pretty stable, wasn't it? We had a pretty stable way of playing, and it all seemed, you know, quite, if not predictable, not all that surprising. I mean, this time it's very difficult to tell who's going to be playing on the wing, who's going to be playing out wide. I think Foster's like he's the first name on the sheet, isn't he? Cullen is clearly going to play. But apart from that, you know, Trafford, you know, questions are being asked about his performance. It's just so difficult to predict who is going to be in the side, and therefore to know, you know, what the likely outcome might be. And I find that it's an unusual situation to be in as a football fan, isn't it? Not only could I not name Vincent Kompany's best 11, I don't think I could name my best 11 because it changes from week to week so radically that I haven't had time to have a look at, you know, X or Y player to know whether I think, you know, they're who I think should be in the team. So it's difficult when you're on a podcast trying to talk about a football match that hasn't happened yet, when like I say, you don't know what the team's going to be, and you can't really forge a sort of reasonable argued position on who should or shouldn't be playing. It's a strange situation to be in, but there we are.
Yeah, and Chris, we've said it several times, haven't we? It's kind of, as Woody alluded to, there'll be a couple of left field changes. You know, Vitinho will be up front on his own or whatever, won't he? Or, you know, Masenga will suddenly find himself at centre half. There's all this kind of confusion and chaos almost. I'm sure Vincent has a really set idea on what he wants to achieve with the players he's got. But are you going to take the bait that I've offered Woody and Justin and give us a change, controversial or otherwise?
Well, I think we know. Yeah, so there might be a semblance of chaos, as Justin said, but I think we know he's more horses for courses than Sean Dyche ever was, but won't often change his philosophy, except for, you know, surprising us all against Manchester City on day one. You know, when he lined up with effectively a back five. You know, Brentford flick between a back three and a back four. What will they turn out on Saturday? Will that affect Vincent's thinking? You know, if he goes hell for leather and plays a front three against their back three, that'd be very interesting, for example. You know, and so, you know, say Hickey likes to get forward. Can we get, you know, if it's Koleosho in there, if it's Odebear in there, in behind him, if it's Zarori in there, he might come in out of the cold as such. You just don't know, do you? But I say, I mean, Trafford was taking a bit of stick the other night for the free kick. The Ukraine under-21s beating England 3-2. But it's, again, I said a couple of weeks ago, it's like the Joe Hart situation. I don't necessarily think you can point any fingers at him for specific goals, but it's just more the feel of things, isn't it? And things felt better, albeit at a different level last season with Muric, but I don't see that changing. I think Taylor will start, toss up at right back. You know, does you know? You imagine Berger plays for his physicality. Brentford like to play with two 8s as such. Do Burnley play with Cullen and a second pivot next to him? That's why Vincent makes the money, isn't it? But it could be anything. Like I said, like Justin was alluded to, we've seen Koleosho play well wide. We've seen Odebear play well wide. We've seen Goodmanson, if fit, play well there. We know what Zarori can do. We don't know about Benson's fitness situation. But any one of those you could pitch into the, you know, Amdouni can play.
Not even mentioned.
Yeah, Brun
Larson there as well, have we?
Yeah, Amdouni comes back with it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Amdouni gets a goal under his belt for for the Swiss national side. Could he play? I liked him, coming in, from the right hand side. Anyone's guess.
I don't think he's going to play, but it's really good to see Darko Cherlinov back. I must say that's they asked company about it in his press conference today, and it's really positive news that he's back on the pitch and playing football again. Great news after what happened over the summer.
Part of that Premier League squad, apparently, because he took Bastian's place. We were able to replace Bastian, who, of course, went out on loan to Turkey. And I think Cherlinov got a full 45 minutes in one of the games and then 20-odd minutes in the second game for North Macedonia. Like you say, brilliant to see him back after that illness, some kind of blood poisoning, we think, over the summer. Whether he plays a part of that, I don't know. I'd still say that Cherlinov was probably one of the people I was most excited about when we signed him, because he'd just got a promotion under his belt in Germany, and he just felt like this kind of player. And to be fair, I think he's looked positive when he's come on, but he's, when he's been thrust into the action, he's perhaps not quite been composed enough, shall we say, to properly show what he's about. He's been a bit too eager to please, and I think sometimes maybe that's the culture company has. Maybe that is that you've only got one or two chances to really make an impression for Vincent, and that's, A, keeps everyone on the toes, but B, perhaps isn't conducive necessarily for players being able to show what they're really about as well.
He had to score at West Brom, didn't he, last year? But he's like an Eagles type for me. Some might feel that a bit of a luxury, but does get fans off the seats, and he's always looking to make things happen, which it's what you want to see in football. He's got that sort of nature about him, but I think he's a long way down the pecking order. I'd be surprised if we saw him anytime soon, to be honest.
Means he starts on Saturday. There you go.
or the new optimistic drummer, because I reckon he seems like the kind of lad that if you gave him a drum, he's just happy to be there. I mean, the way he celebrated the championship title, you'd have thought he'd have made 38 appearances. I love that enthusiasm. He's just, get him a drum, get him a big stick, get him a seat next to Justin.
I just don't. I was trying to think of optimistic drummers, and I'm thinking like, Meg White from the White Stripes always never cracked a smile, did she? She ain't an optimistic drummer.
Pessimistic drummer, Meg White, I think. Yeah.
Steve Morris from New Order, Joy Division.
Human metronome.
Yeah, not too optimistic.
He's quite funny. He's a funny. He's funny though, isn't he? He's an amusing.
He's quite
Have you
witty,
seen him into it? Yeah, his books are good as well. Funny. Maybe Morris. I think
maybe Morris can just keep the beat for Josh Cullen. Yes, keep the metronomic beat for Josh Cullen. But do hit us up with your suggestions on social media at BO Podcast on Facebook and Twitter /X, whatever you want to discuss and call it as these days. But we'll leave it there for this episode. We'll be back on Monday with, hopefully, we say this every week, hopefully a positive debrief from the Brentford game. Until then, enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy your weekend. If you're going down to Brentford, don't forget, it's your job. You've got to make some noise. Got to create that atmosphere. Nobody else is going to do it if you guys don't, until we get the drummer in place. We will see you on Monday up the Clarets.